Watch the ride.
It is too cold for butterflies. My God, that is a very late Red Admiral. Hello, everyone. Now, as I'm sure a lot of you know, there has been a lot of issues with the right to repair as a growing problem, as the lines get blurred about when you buy a product, whether you really own it or not, because of the way that companies still try and control the thing that you bought. And obviously we've seen problems with things from like mobile phones to TVs to even washing machines, stuff like that. And cars. There's been a lot of problems with cars where people have wanted to fix something with their car and they find that they can't because of some right to repair issues. Now, I want to play devil's advocate a little bit with this one because I always try and give a balanced view. There is a side to this that I understand from the manufacturers. Before you go, wait, whether there is no side to understand, this is the only side I understand. If someone does something to their car, like, I don't know, they change the brake pads and they don't know what they're doing, they make a mistake, then the brakes don't work, then there's an accident, then there's a liability case comes up. The companies don't want to be held responsible for someone else's failures in doing a job. But then again, if it was like the old days where it wasn't such a complicated system, that maybe these things wouldn't happen so easily because it's not all electrical, it's all more mechanical. But we've moved past the times of mechanical stuff. We now have very complicated pieces of machinery. So I can understand why the companies may need to cover their arses in some cases, but that doesn't mean they should be blocking people from fixing their own stuff. Because fixing your own things is very important and people have done it for a very long time. A lot of people aren't doing it nearly as much as they used to these days, and I think that is partially because it's got a lot more complicated, but also people's willingness to learn about these things has fallen off a lot, and people's ability to learn these things has fallen off a lot. I think in the old days pretty much every guy did an amount of work to his own car, percentage wise. Now there's a lot of people who don't even know how to hold a screwdriver, let alone change a set of brake pads. And I'll admit that, you know, changing a set of brake pads, for instance, on this bike, which is purely mechanical, is easier than something with an ABS system. It doesn't mean you can't learn it, it just means it's more complicated. So that's the only bit of devil's advocate work I'm going to do in this, because I don't agree with any of it to a very strong point. You know, I'm someone who very much fixes all my own stuff and then wants other people to learn and teaches you how to do it. But I do also, with that, say you have to understand your limitations and work on, you know, you need an amount of mechanical understanding before you start doing things. And the first job you do maybe shouldn't be changing a piston in an engine if you've never even changed a set of sprockets. I think that's common sense. And this is where I want to ask you a question, basically. Have you had any right to repair issues with a motorcycle? If you've got any right to repair issues in general you want to talk about, please do. I'm always interested to hear about how people have had experiences with different companies, whether that be a phone or some other product or a car. I'd love to hear about it. But the main thing I want to know is, have you ever had any right to repair issues with a motorcycle? Because I do think, even though they're getting a lot more complicated, we seem to have kept fairly safe away from the right to repair problems and not being able to fix their own stuff, generally. I mean, if you get some very high-end sports bike, yeah, you're probably going to have some understanding issues because they're so complicated now, and a lot of that comes down to the electronic systems. And indeed, a lot of the problems that people have with bikes nowadays are the electronic systems, not in the sense of the old days where, you know, it was a sensor that was a bit crappy, or the wiring wasn't done very well, or connectors corroded. I mean about, you know, a computer software problem where the code is not working out right, it's not been written correctly, and it causes problems. Repeating, looping issues, stuff like that. I can think of a couple of bike brands from the past who had some very severe issues with their software, constantly locking riders out, sometimes in some mildly dangerous ways. But as I say, I've never heard directly of anyone having a right to repair issue with a motorcycle, so I'd like to hear about that. I do also, and I'm sure this will be brought up by some of you because you're all very astute, I actually do. Are you on your phone? That looked like a I'm on my phone moment. As I've talked about before about electric bikes, as a physical way of propelling a motorcycle on a ride, regardless of charging and all of the problems that can come with it, I find them entertaining and fun. But there are problems that come with them. But one of the main things that I'm concerned about with them, and one of the reasons why I still own, this is a 2010 bike and my other bike's a 2008, and I'm not looking to ever buy a new bike. I can see with the electrics how we could very quickly get into some right to repair issues, because it's always in the guise of safety, and even if there is some real safety to that, or if it's accountability liability for if something goes wrong, because if you want to be able to sue the company should something go wrong and it's their fault, but if that's thrown out by you fixing something, it causes a problem. But then, you kind of think that the companies could say, you can fix your own stuff, but just be aware that we're not going to be responsible for your vehicle after that. If something goes wrong, we're going to want to do some pretty extensive testing to prove that it wasn't something you did. So you'd kind of think the companies would be more happy to allow you to work on your own bike, because on that basis, or car or whatever, because they can just turn around and go, well, you worked on it, right? You broke the void sticker. Well, now it's on you. But equally, I don't like that when it comes to some things like white goods, because when it comes to replacing a belt or a heating element or even just a sensor, in old school white goods, like, tumble dryers, washing machines, dishwashers, they were designed for an engineer to take them apart and fix them quickly, because they knew you'd use these for 10, 15, 20 years. But of course now I've heard about things like sealed drums where you can't get into the drum to replace the bearing, and then the whole housing costs like as much as the machine and stuff like this. This is where it gets very bad, in my opinion. And we are going down a line that seems to only be getting worse. As I say, I do understand some sides of it, but it doesn't feel like that was always the intention, because some of these things, like, we just use proprietary fasteners, so you have to go and get a screwdriver from China, basically. Trying to make it difficult for the consumer to fix their own stuff is bad. Sorry, I've got sidetracked. That's where void stickers are a problem, because there are things that you should be able to do yourself, and you shouldn't have to void your warranty to do it, as long as they make it simple enough to do. Like replacing an internal battery on something shouldn't be a warranty void issue, but most of the time it is, even if it's a case of warming it up with a hot air gun, popping off a cover, unplugging a battery cell and then plugging in a new one. As I say, I am not excusing any of this anti-consumer, anti-right to repair stuff by saying I understand why in some cases they do it, because there are very few small cases where I can understand it. But it's like saying, well, we don't want you to pump your tyres up because you might blow your engine up. Like, we can't give you a warranty on your engine because you pumped your own tyres up. You need to come to a service centre and let one of our techs do that, because they know what they're doing. Like, that's where it's, that's an extreme example, but it's an example of like where it could go. And it's a lot easier to do that, I feel, with electrics, motorcycles, which is why I say that is something I am concerned about with them. Oh, it is very cold today. I don't trust the tyres yet. We're in a 70 doing 45. Why? Of course it'd be a red. There's always a red. Now, obviously, I've heard about people having problems getting parts, but I don't consider that to be a right to repair issue. And, well, it's not like the Apple case where they just won't sell them to you. It's only like, no, we'll only sell them to an approved repair centre. I haven't heard of it in that sense of getting parts, but I have heard of parts not being available. But those tend to be for different issues. So I fear that I've just not heard about any, and I'm about to hear a load of stories from people regarding motorcycles, and I had a bike and they wouldn't let me fix this without it going to a service centre and them charging X amount of money. And then this is the thing, it wouldn't necessarily be a problem if they're like, we need one of our techs to fix it, but we're not going to charge you for it, like, something went wrong. But then it's like the simplest of things, like I've heard of having your brakes and pads done from certain places with certain companies on a motorcycle, is you will pay double for the exact same parts you can buy yourself, let's say for half the price. We're not talking about the labour costs here, we're talking about just the part costs. Like, you might pay $200 for a disc, they'll charge you $400 for it, and it's the same part. It's the same part number, it's the same, just everything. And I know, small independents tend to put a little bit of an overhead on parts that they buy alongside the labour costs. It's how they make a bit of money, but it shouldn't be so expensive that but then again, these smaller companies, they need to cover their overheads. But when you're a brand, it shouldn't be like that. But this is where it gets close to almost the subscription system, isn't it? Because when they used to sell you a car or a bike, it was or something, it was like, this will last you a lifetime. You will buy this thing and you will maintain it with us forever. But now it seems like you buy a vehicle and it's it's good for a few years until the updates stop. I know it's not quite as bad as computers, but or mobile phones are very specifically like that. When it comes to buying a new mobile phone, very often you have to consider how many years of updates am I going to get with this thing. That's going to mean it's a better deal. Okay, this one's £100 more, but I get 7 years of updates versus say 3. I'm just trying to think now if I've ever experienced any right to repair issues myself. I don't think I actually have, because most of the time I'm like, well, even if the company won't sell me, say for instance, the battery I need to replace in the item, it doesn't take a genius to work out what battery it is and order it. I mean, even to the case of sometimes when they will sell you the battery, you realise again it's a known part, it's a standard size, and they want to charge you 3 times the price just because it's got their name on it or something. Well, they're not giving me a warranty anymore, so I'll go and buy the much cheaper one. Same quality, please don't kill me, thank you, and I'll fix the item myself. I mean, and I tend to then show you how I did that, like only a little while ago, my Rode Wireless Go 2s, my microphones, one of the battery cells turned into a danger pillow, so I found what battery it was online, bought it for a few pounds, installed it, nice and easy. There we go. It wasn't under warranty anyway because it'd gone outside of its warranty period, and its technical 12-month warranty period, but this is where I get a bit questioning with it. You actually have rights in the UK with manufactural faults to do with you being covered up to 6 years. Now, should a battery in a device last longer than about 2-3 years? I feel like it should. They might argue it shouldn't. If they had a better customer service system where it's just like, call these people, speak to them, yep, send that in to us, we'll get the battery changed over. Even if they charged me for the battery, I'd be okay with that. But it was difficult to even get anyone. And when you're in this scenario where you look on the website, there's no real contact, so you have to go to Twitter, and then you're realising you're just dealing with a social media team, and they then say, oh, maybe speak to these people, and then you don't hear anything from them. It's like, sometimes I read things on Amazon that drive me nuts in the reviews, where people will say, oh, it broke after 2 months, but it was outside the return window, so I can't get my money back, and I'm mad at the company. You have the right to return it for 12 months. If Amazon turn around and say, well, it's outside its warranty period, I don't care what you say. I have consumer rights, and I'm going to use them. You may have to speak to the company directly, but I've actually found with Amazon, most of the time, if you go to them and say, look, I tried to speak to the companies, get them to uphold their warranty, and they won't. Amazon then tend to go, well, do you know what? Here's the money, keep it, throw it in the bin. I did that a while ago, where I had a problem with a petrol strimmer that we bought, and the pull start broke on it. And when I tried to return it, there was no way of returning it. And Amazon just said, do you know what? Keep it, here's a refund. And I'm like, okay, well, thanks very much for that. Paid £9, I think it was, for a new upgraded pull start, because it's a standard part. Bish bash bosh, still working to this day, and actually easier to start now than it's ever been. So you win and you lose with this stuff, because that never would have happened in the past. Anyway, as I say, motorcycle, any right to repair stories, let me know about them. I'm always interested to read about this stuff. There's heads up for other people who read the comments, but the main thing I want to know about is right to repair issues with motorcycles. What have you experienced? If you enjoyed the video, hit the like button, subscribe if you're new here. If you want to help support me through Patreon or YouTube members, I would hugely appreciate that. And the support is amazing I get from you guys, and I'm getting new people on board every week, it seems, these days, which is just great. So thank you so much, because it frees me up. Until the next one, bye-bye.